Happy 54th anniversary or birthday, whatever, to Kamen Rider, the TV show from 1971, featuring Takeshi Hongo becoming a grasshopper cyborg man and fighting against the evil Shocker organization. Yeah, which is incredible. It's been 54 years. There's been a ton of spin-off shows or sequel series, whatever. And Kamen Rider has been something that's captivated me for the last, I don't know, 15-ish years, 14 to 15 years. I knew about Master Rider, and I watched Master Rider as a kid, some of it, but not all of it. It wasn't that great, but I've tried. Anyway, going back though to the original Kamen Rider, I started watching that about 14 years ago. I saw that. I saw Black. I saw Forze as it was going, or as that started, and I watched all of Forze, and it blew my mind. I watched this, and it blew my mind. I watched Black, and it blew my mind. And yeah, like Kamen Rider is great. And I want to talk about the first episode because, in light of the anniversary, I thought, I should give us another watch. So I went ahead and watched the first episode, and I have lots of thoughts on it. And then I have some stuff from the Kamen Rider Wiki that I'd like to discuss real quick because it's kind of fun and relevant to the current year. And there's also some news, you could say, that might also be relevant as well. So, yeah, I think, yes, I think this is going to be a fun one. So we will talk about all that in a minute or two. But first, I want to go ahead and just kind of talk about the show overall. And here we go. Well, actually, just like kind of a first impression of the show. Like, do you think little kids watching Kamen Rider back in 1971 totally had the tragedy and horror elements of the first episode go over their heads, or do you think they really absorbed it? Because as much as I love the spectacle and the fighting and everything, I think there's something really deep and emotional going on with the show, and I think that's the real reason that it's persisted for all these years, because I think it's got meaning. It has depth to it, and that depth, I think, stirs people and keeps them watching. Even if the body's dissolving into foam, don't keep them watching. But anyway, like, I'm sure the Spider-Man, Spider Kaijin, whatever he was called, was scary, and they could tell that the scientists were scary with their painted faces and their weird poses and stuff, and like the Shocker Combat Men too are creepy, and the women, the Shocker ladies, what do they call them? I think they call them the Shocker ladies. But anyway, like, they're all creepy, walking in slowly in a group and giggling and stuff with their hair covering their faces, and weird vibes. But like, I don't think they picked up on the existential dread that Takeshi Hongo has to face, or does face, and that is like dropped on him in this first episode, because in very little screen time they do a lot to his character, and I think that's really interesting. Like, I think it's good that kids don't necessarily pick up on the existential thread, but looking back at it, or looking at it as an older person, you can see, as an adult, you can see like, oh, this is horrible what's happened to this guy. But like, I'm sure the kids were wowed by the spectacle and the fights and the racing and the cars and the jumping and the motorcycle and all that stuff, and the crazy monster suits and costumes for the Shocker guys, including the Spider-Man or Man Spider, whatever you're going to call him. I'm sure that was all like really working on them on a base level. But I wonder like how long it took for kids to go back and see like this depth that it had to it, because it's more than just monster suits and stuff and fighting and explosions. In fact, I think 0 explosions in this episode, if I'm correct. Anyway, yeah, so I think it's interesting that the episode works on like this basic kid level where you get to see Rider destroy Shocker, at least for now, and that he has an ongoing struggle, and you want to see him fight the next monster, even if you don't really care about Takeshi Hongo. You care about Kamen Rider and watching him fight, because the fighting is beautiful. It's beautiful violence. And anyway, that's like one level. But beyond like just the spectacle and the flash and like seeing it at the surface level, this episode had a lot of interesting elements, and I think there's like horror elements, there's drama, there's action spectacle, and then there's pathos, which maybe pathos should be part of drama, but I'll jump back into that. Something I thought about as soon as I finished the episode was, it's really interesting that the first image that we see is a flower, and behind that flower is the mysterious Spider-Man cyborg. He's stalking Takeshi Hongo as he races on his motorcycle, and then the last image that we see in the episode is Takeshi Hongo. He's riding off on his motorcycle. He's a cyborg now. He's one of Shocker's cyborgs specifically. He's riding through the mountainside, which is a natural. And we see he's on this machine, his motorcycle, and then we see his face, and his face is sad. He's almost crying because of what he's lost and the loneliness that he feels because of it. But the camera cuts away from his face as he rides towards his destiny to continue fighting Shocker. And I feel like that's really profound and really deep. And I feel like that, like those two, like the opening and closing image, kind of like they encapsulate the whole episode and the whole story, really. And they also kind of fit with that horror, drama, action, spectacle, and pathos kind of, I don't know, breakdown or whatever that I saw when I watched this episode this time. So on the horror, we get a lot of like POV shots that are like very voyeuristic, and we see also like very voyeuristic aspects of or like scenes where one of the Shocker people, whether it's the Spider-Man or one of his goons, is watching Hongo, he's watching Ruriko, watching Toby Tachibana, or whatever. He's watching different people. They're watching different people at different times. And also we get these really interesting, like, so we get those shots of them spying on people. And then even like there's a little spider tracker thing, camera microphone that's on the back of Tachibana and Toby's car that signals the Spider-Man and tells him where to go and what to do and whatever. So and that's a cool little bit of tech, and like an interesting thing that this cyborg spider guy has little cyborg spider things that he can throw out and use for spying and stuff. Like that's a really cool like world building aspect that I didn't even think about to touch on, because the world building here is pretty cool too, and that's more of a bookish term, but I think it works for shows like this. Anyway, we have all this voyeuristic spying stuff going on, and then we also get beyond that, seeing characters spy. We get to see characters through like spying on stuff through their own eyes. So the camera is acting as the person who's watching this go on, this creeper, this villain, this evil who's stalking and waiting to kill somebody. And I wouldn't say it really puts the viewer in their shoes, but it feels creepy. It feels unsettling because we know that they're like hiding somewhere and watching. And then we also get a lot of scenes where the camera is right like behind, like the Spider-Man's hand is here and he's wiggling his fingers and stuff and being creepy. And at one point it's cool. He's wiggling his fingers, then he like gestures out, and then fog appears. And then within that fog, ropes appear, webs appear, and those stop Hongo. So like that's a cool mixture of like it's a cool old school tokusatsu technique. It's just using like the cutting of the camera from one image to another, and it makes your mind think that's the way film works, that these two things are linked to each other, that one causes the other. The smoke comes out, then the webs come out in the next cut, and it's really interesting how like tokusatsu really leans into a lot of cool filmmaking stuff, which obviously you probably already know. And it's just kind of fun to talk about. And it's fun to watch in action, to know like, okay, I'm watching a 1970s tokusatsu. This thing's 54 years old. And they either couldn't afford to do things a certain way, or they hadn't figured out ways to do them, or whatever you want to say. They had limitations that they were working within. And within those limitations, you get to see, and you get to kind of like play along and have fun with them, and like engage your own imagination on purpose to say like, oh, I see what they're doing. When he does this, he's sending out his web. There's fog first for some reason, then there's the webbing and the rope, and it stops Hongo, and then Hongo falls off the cliff or whatever. And like, oh, how's that work? And how does he survive? And Midori Kawa's all sad, and like you get to see this little drama play out in this little scene with and it's ridiculous on the surface. This guy in this kind of ridiculous, or I mean, the head is. I actually like the suit. I think the spider suit. The web cape is not good. I think stripping away the web cape is a good decision. But other than that, I think it's a really solid design. And we get to see this, kind of outlandish design for sure. I'll say it's outlandish, and I don't think that's saying it looks cheap. It's crazy. Why would you wear that? But if that's what you've been turned into, that's another story. Anyway, it takes this outlandish design and then it puts it through, this physical motion, and then we see the effect of the fog and the ropes and everything, the web coming out, and it all works together, and you get to play along, you get to participate in the storytelling kind of with tokusatsu. I feel like, especially the older stuff with the lower budget or the greater limitations, I'll say. But it all works, and it all feels really good, and it's really enjoyable to watch unfold. But anyway, getting back to my point about the horror aspect, like this POV kind of camera where like he's watching stuff happen, and like you get in that perspective of the monsters is really interesting. And there's even like a psychological horror going on where like when Hongo's chained down to the table, the operating table, the scientist is going on about how like he's making these people into cyborgs, and these cyborgs will be slaves to whoever, this mysterious voice that's speaking, and he almost feels like he's like the envoy of that person, or like he's speaking in his stead, and he's not, because we realize that there's something beyond him. But it's just like, it's like creepy how cold it is, how inhuman it is, how inhumane it is, and how like it's all just about power for these guys, and they're going to do whatever they have to whoever they have to, and hurt them no matter how much they have to in order to get what they want. It's just really like very effective casting of the villain, and it shows the horror of that ambition, that greed for power, that lust for power at any cost, and it's really horrible. Anyway, and then we have all this drama going on with Hongo. It looks like he murdered Professor Midorikawa to Ruriko Midorikawa's daughter, and so it's kind of like a tragedy. And he's been framed kind of for the murder, and she blames him, holds it against him, and she's frightened of him and hateful towards him. And Midorikawa is one of the two people in the world who could understand him and know what he's going through, partially because he caused that to happen, which is another tragic twist type element. And it's a more dramatic thing to happen, other than he just gets turned into stuff by a random happenstance. Instead, it's somebody who he should have trusted or did trust for a while and was trusting again, who had betrayed him. And Hongo got over that, and then this guy's murdered right in front of him, and then he gets blamed for the murder, which is horrible. And then Toby Tachibana is still left for him to trust in and confide in, and nothing's happened to him so far in the show. But then you have that conflict with Midorikawa with Ruriko, and that's interesting. And there's even like when Ruriko finds out that her father's alive, she's so hopeful she can go see him because he's been missing for a long time. So like you kind of feel for her because she's going to see her father again. He's kind of haunted by what he's done. He feels haunted when Hongo seems to have died later on. So like these people took their job seriously, it seems to me. And I'm perceiving that they tried really hard and they really emoted and they really made this stuff real. They really sold these scenes of the drama. Midorikawa, Ruriko, and then Takeshi Hongo as well. Like the actors who are portraying these characters really did a great job of like just leaving it all on the screen, on the page, whatever, on the field. Like they really put it out there. And like I really believe in this little drama that's going on between them. And it's a lot of fun. Let's see. Yeah, the action spectacle is just fantastic. I mean, you've got Hongo throwing people down a cliff. You've got him falling down a cliff. You've got this, man spider throwing a web rope thing up and hopping up the wall, and it's really weird. And like the camera, like the changing of the speed being adjusted and tweaked as they're doing stuff, and like these faraway distance shots, these close-up shots, these dynamic cuts to make it look like Hongo's lifting him and two other guys up in the air on a staff or like a quarterstaff type thing and then throwing them down to the ground and stuff. It's just like, it's all really fantastic. It's very energetic. It feels very visceral. And like, I would imagine people might have gotten hurt doing this. Like the stunt team really is like, they're laudable for what they did. It's amazing the depths or the length they were willing to go to make this feel real and to be really dynamic and super exciting to watch. Like I could just watch these. I have just watched these fight scenes before just for fun. And like, it's no wonder that in the, what was that? The 2022 Hideaki Anno Shin Kamen Rider, like no wonder he reshot some of this stuff shot for shot and wanted to pull the stuff. It's iconic. It's creepy. It's weird. It's wonderful. And well, yeah, it's very exciting. Something that I want to talk about a lot. Well, I kind of touched on a little bit when I was talking about Hongo being alone, and I have a short that I'll link to that talks about that a lot more. The pathos, the pain, the sorrow that our hero has to bear is really interesting. And in Ultraman, he effectively dies in the first episode, but then he comes back, but then he gets better, and then he is just kind of like, yeah, I'm alive. I defeated that monster. I don't want to let people know that I'm Ultraman, but I think I'll call him Ultraman. And then he proceeds to do whatever. And there's nothing wrong with Hayata. I like him. He's fun. Super Sentai I don't have a good basis for looking back on it, like early on, like Go Ranger. So I won't say too much about that. I do think though that like Aka Ranger in the Go Ranger manga like has a lot of pathos that he's dealing with. He's very emotional young man, very sad about the things that have happened in his life, and he wants to defeat the Black Cross Army because of that. Cyborg 009, again, I'm not as familiar as I could be, but like, and I'm not saying Takeshi Hongo in Kamen Rider is unique, but he's definitely a very potent and powerful version of this story, of this suffering hero, of this burdened hero, this person who's weighed down by what's happened to them. But the wonderful thing about him is that before we see things get to be their worst for Hongo, we get to see what a great person Hongo is. He doesn't blame Midorikawa for having referred Shocker to him, or suggested that Shocker kidnap him. He seems like he's totally forgiven him, and it's not even an issue anymore. And he wants to help the professor and join him in fighting against Shocker. He also has a positive attitude, and he's encouraging the professor to like calm down and not blame himself, and to be positive, basically, and that they're gonna somehow work things out together. And he like kind of, not naively, but just like he brazenly continues to push Ruriko and tell her, I am innocent and I didn't, kill your father. I was trying to save him. And I think that's a little bit of his optimism as well. You could argue that it's not, and that I'm grasping at straws here, but like his portrayal, Hiroshi Fujioka's portrayal of Hongo in these scenes, he's very earnest, and he's very, I don't know, he's just like extremely positive and optimistic despite what's happened to him. And I find that really endearing and really wonderful and really inspiring. And I think it's a really interesting take on this kind of character. He's not dark and brooding. He's sad sometimes. He's mostly sad when he's riding his motorcycle. But I feel like he's processing things as he's doing that. And he's doing, the one thing that they weren't able to take from him was his ability to ride the motorcycle. I don't know if you can still feel the wind or not in the same way, which would be an interesting thing to explore and get into. But like without being overly, emotionally overwrought, like it sells to you, and it tells you, it makes you feel and understand Hongo's pain and what he's going through and what he's lost, and yet he persists. Nevertheless, he persists, and it's really beautiful and awesome. I think that positive spirit, that spirit of perseverance, is part of what makes Kamen Rider so special. I do think it is the redemption aspect. Like Hongo wants to redeem himself or be redeemed from what's happened to him, and he fights for that. And I think those two things together make Kamen Rider lasting and beautiful and an important story, I would argue. Okay, now, real quick, I just want to talk about who's doing what here in the credits. We've got, because the direction was so fantastic, I just want to talk about Koichi Takamoto. Was the director for these 2 episodes only. I guess just the first 2 episodes, the Eerie Man Spider and the Monstrous Scorpion Man, which seems wild because it was such a fantastic dynamic style, and that style continues. So I guess just all the directors were really amazing at this time, or everybody who worked on the show anyway. It was episodes 1 and 3, I'm sorry. Episode 2 was directed by somebody else, and I'll just check and see if I can find out. Yeah, somebody definitely else, an Orita. But the writer for this episode was Masaru Igami, and Masaru Igami is, hold on, Masaru Igami is the father of Toshiki Inoue and the grandfather of Akiko Inoue, and Akiko Inoue is currently writing number 1 Sentai Gojujur, which people seem to be loving, and Toshiki Inoue wrote Kuga, right? He wrote Jetman, and hold on, I gotta find this. He's got a lot of Super Sentai credits. Okay, hold on. I know he wrote Fies, but what else did he write? Oh, he wrote a decent amount of Kuga. He was the head writer for Agito. That's what it was. He wrote a decent amount of Ryuki. I did not realize that. And he's the head writer for Fies. And there's a moment in this episode where, like, basically, Takeshi and Ruriko have a misunderstanding, and they don't get to talk about it and clear it up. And that's like kind of a joke or a shtick from Fies, that nobody talks about things and clears things up. And like all of the problems of the show could be solved, people say, who don't like Fies, by the people just sitting down and having a conversation instead of fighting. And I find it hilarious that started with his father in episode 1 of Kamen Rider. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Check out my show notes. Go to mjwinners.com to find out more about what I'm doing. I'm going to be getting back to Gov as far as Kamen Rider is concerned, and I will continue to cover the original Kamen Rider because I love it and it makes me happy. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. And, yeah. Oh, I'm also working on getting my book published. It's called Mockwing Mayhem. It's about magical bugs who battle monsters, and those monsters find out where they live, and they go there to kill them all. And 2 of the in-training bugs magical bugs, have to figure out a way to survive, to defeat a monster, to save their master, and then hopefully not die to the rest of the flock that is attacking their fort where they live. It's pretty cool. You can get a free chapter, you can get a free short story, and you can get information about when it's going to come out and other bonus feature type stuff in the show notes, or go to mgmunoz.com. You can find all the links there. Until next time, folks, take care and be well.